This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
Bruce E. Edwards, and I reside in Masters Mills.
Okay. How did you end up on Cape Cod?
I was born here.
How did you become interested in the military?
I was working young, so when I was getting ready to come out of school, I had to have something to do, and there was like back in the '60s there wasn't that much options to do for me. So I said, look, in order for me to go, all my other cousins and uncles and everybody, they said, just go in the military. Military will help you find where you want to go afterwards. And that's how I ended up getting in the military.
Did you have any sort of dreams before then of what you wanted to do?
Well, my uncle owned a business. It was the oldest refuge business in the country. And I always worked summers with him, and he always promised me that if I stayed, working with him like I was, he would give me his share of the business.
How did your childhood affect your decision to join the military?
Uh, well, well, you can see from the pictures on this walls that everywhere, almost this whole street, my family is one of the biggest families on Cape Cod. So this whole street from here all the way almost into Howard Center and down President Lake Avenue was all my family. So every place I went to in the houses, you'd always see my uncle with a uniform, my cousin with a uniform, Airborne Division, this one, and they always said Army. There's very few that was in the Air Force.
What were your hobbies as a kid?
I like to run. I used to like to run like long distance, and I like cars, automobiles when I got a little older. But when I was real young, I used to like to paint or draw. Put it that way, draw, not paint.
Were you at all afraid of going into the war?
Oh yes, in the beginning when back when I was coming along, they had a draft, and once you come anywhere near leaving the school system, they give you a notice that you have to report to the draft board. And I reported to the draft board, and I failed my feet. Well, not my feet, more my. I used to wear glasses, my glasses. So when I failed it the first time, but Vietnam was on. So when I failed it the first time, I said, you know what? I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to let that. I'll go back and I'll enlist. So I enlisted so I could become in the military, and then I got in. You don't want to be a failure.
Why did you choose the Army?
I don't know. I chose the Army. Well, I lived with my aunt up in Hyannis, and her son. There was two of them. One was in the Coast Guard, and one was in the Army, and so that's why I picked the Army.
Knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I would have probably pursued. Well, I would have probably pursued the career that I was into in the military. I was in the helicopters and I was aviation mechanic. I would have pursued that a little more probably, but I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have changed too much.
What exactly did you do in the military?
I was a mechanic on a helicopter. I fixed helicopters and whatever I did.
Describe an average day in the Army.
Where? In the United States or overseas?
Either one.
All right, in the United States, it was basic training. When I first came into basic training, it was a challenge of me going up against guys that I never saw before. You know what I mean? I'm coming from Cape Cod, Massachusetts to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, which is right near Columbia, South Carolina. And if you know anything about the 60s, you know they had a lot of things with whites and blacks. Well, when I went down there from here, it was a whole new world. You know what I mean? I couldn't, well, my skin being not so dark, I got a little to a degree. I could go inside a restaurant. And then I have some friends and I had some Italian friends or Irish friends and some blacks. And we could go in, but the blacks couldn't. I mean, that were darker than I were, they couldn't get in. They had to go around and get it out of a window. Where I went in and I said, "No, come on. Everything's good, man. They're letting us go in. I'm going to buy the chicken." They told me everything's all right. Once they saw them, they said, "No, it's not." You know what I mean? So that was that was a shake-up. You know, that was a wake-up and a shake-up. You know what I mean?
So what was your average day like in when you were overseas?
In Vietnam, that was when I first got there. That was a little fearful because when I got there, they brought us into an area and they gave us a ride on a bus when we came out of the Tan Son Nhut Air Base. And we went in, and I remember asking the gentleman, I said, "Why is all this on the window?" He says, "Well, you know, they throw things, you know, that explode. So we don't want anything to break through the windows if possible." I went, "Oh my Lord, we are in." You know, you don't never you can read all you want, but when you're there, it's a difference.
What type of friends did you have in the military?
I had. That's one thing I really regret. I regret that I never, followed up with the guys that I had. I had about 5 guys. They used to tell us when I first went in the military, if you go to Vietnam, make sure you get some guys that you can depend on. And I used to have guys. One guy worked into Stratcom, which is where you get all your intelligence. Then I had another guy in arms, which is firearms and stuff. He was good at that. Then I had another friend that was he was a medic, and it was nice to have. So I had an array of friends, about 5, 6 guys. And like I said, I had Murphy, I had Joseph Shalari. I had some real nice guys. I wish, like I said, that's one thing I really regret, not being able to talk to them or find them after the military.
When you hear the word Vietnam, what's your first memory?
That there are good and bad in every one of us. And when I got over the shock of being in a war zone, so to speak, I found that a lot of the people that I had any contact with they weren't that bad as everybody kept saying. They weren't. They were just looking for something to eat. I mean, they were, and they weren't so. There was nothing wrong with them. It was just our perception, my perception of what I was. When I went in the military, the first 6 months, they had my name sold. They didn't have me as Bruce Edwards. They had me as Bruce Rose. They had all. I didn't even get paid for 5 months. So it was a lot going on, and then they were trying to put me on duty too. So, and I was a little fearful of that, because if they don't know who I am, and anything should ever happen to me, then who's going to know who to notify who?
Why'd they change your name?
I don't know. They put I went into the induction center and they said Bruce Edwards, and then when I went to Vietnam, they had Bruce E. Rose, and I went, "Oh, how'd you come up with Rose?" But my mother's maiden name was Rose. Now I don't know why they did that.
What was your most memorable experience in the war?
Most memorable? Good.
Yeah.
Going to other places, I think. In the war itself, the most memorable thing was the guys. You know, the camaraderie with the guys. The guys were the guys I had were they were awesome. They were really really guys you could count on. You want me to close that?
That's fine. What emotions did you feel leaving home to go into the military?
Well, you know, you're gonna feel. Well, I felt like, oh man, did I do the right thing? You know what I mean? And then, cause I signed up, so they said if you signed up, you wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. Well, that was a boo boo, cause they took me right away. You know what I mean? And like you said, but I was a little apprehensive, I guess. I was, you know, you get worried about, you hear a lot, you know what I mean? And there was a lot of distractions, you know what I mean? There was a lot of, like I said, Kennedy in '63, you know, Kennedy got killed, Martin Luther King got killed, Bobby Kennedy got killed. We were sitting there over there going like, oh my Lord, what's going on? You know what I mean? We're over here fighting for the country, man, and the country's fighting its own stuff. You know, you get mixed emotion.
How did you feel coming home?
That was a kicker. That really was a kicker. When I came home, they had given me a new duty station, which was in Washington, state of Washington. I put in, but they always tell you, but they don't. I put in for Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Because I said, well, I'd be near home. Well, you know, they always do the opposite. So they sent me to Fort Lewis, Washington. So I went over to Fort Lewis, Washington, because you have to report. So I went to report. But I had so many days off, before I had to go anywhere. I had these days off, and I was, you get 30 days off before you have to go back to your duty station. So I said, let me just go over my duty station early. So I went early over to Fort Lewis, I remember. And I remember, man, getting bombarded with, people like, you baby killers, and you this, and you that. We go, what? And I remembered it was friction. You know what I mean? It was like me going over there, and they didn't even, we were going across the line. The first thing, though, I remembered was a nice cold glass of milk and a real steak. And I'm not a real meat eater, but, I was over in Vietnam for a year, and I didn't want that milk, and I didn't want too much of their food. You know what I mean? I didn't mind what we ate. A lot of it was rations, but I wanted a steak, and I wanted a cold glass of milk.
Describe a typical meal that was served to you during the Vietnam War.
Sea rations, out of a can. You had a little P39, and you open the can up. They would have little crackers. They would have beans. They would have beans, lima beans, and ham. Everything was in a can, and you don't know how old those cans are. Yeah.
What were you most looking forward to when you came home?
I was looking forward to getting back to my uncle's business, because I was roughly about 19, 20. I was about 20 when I came to Fort Lewis, Washington. I said, no, I'm not staying here, because they'll put me in the brig. You know what I mean? This is too much contention. So what I did was I signed up to go back to Vietnam. So I had already did my year. So they said to me, if you go back, you won't have to go do any reserves. So I said, well, I'm going back anyway. So they're saying, well, you don't know, you may not go back to the same place you were. I said, so be it. You know what I mean? I'm not staying here. They'll put me in, in the jail, brig, whatever. So when I went back to Vietnam, and I remembered they shipped me out to another area, and it was a little hotter then. I got into some little stuff, nothing too crazy.
Describe what your training and boot camp experience was like.
Well, my boot camp was nice because competition. You know what I mean? I like that. And you have to run, you have to throw grenades, you have to do certain things, low crawl underneath the wire while they're shooting over top of you and stuff like that. It gives you. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're not trying to hit you or shoot you. They're trying to. Yeah, move that. Yeah. So what got me was that we were a competition, and the first thing when you first get into basic training, the first thing was you had different companies. You had Company A, Company B, Company C, Company E. Well, I was in E, and the sergeants or the people in charge, they always was competed against each other. So I thought that was, I was always in good shape. I could run a lot. I could run. I used to like running long distance, so I was always in good shape. So we would compete against one another, and we did that throughout basic training. Everything was, you wanted to have 500 points. I think I had 480 something, which I thought was excellent.
What were the places you traveled to during your time in the military?
Oh, I went to Hong Kong one, two times, three times to Hong Kong. I really liked that. That was nice. The people were nice over there too. That was when England was in charge of Hong Kong.
Would you continue?
Go ahead. No.
Oh. Would you ever revisit some of the places you served in?
Yeah, I had a friend. I think he lived around here, and he was getting a bunch of the guys together so we could go over to Cam Bay and some other stuff in Southeast Vietnam.
What was your experience with contacting the people of Vietnam, with being in contact with them?
With the people, Vietnamese?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, there was some that you took with a grain of salt. They had but on the whole, the people were nice people. I got along with them fine. You know what I mean? It's just that when you when you go in certain areas, they tell you there's North Vietnam and South Vietnam, or the Viet Cong, which is North Vietnamese. Now, if you come down here and all this whole street's Cape Verdean, and you say, gee whiz, who's Cape Verdean? Is that a Cape Verdean? Yeah, with this one, you don't know. So Vietnam, they don't have a piece of tape or something on them that says I'm North or I'm less, so you're open, you know what I mean? And back then, they were using horrible stuff. They were doing horrible stuff. But on a whole, like I said, the people, I never had any problem with any of them.
If any of your kids or grandkids told you they were thinking of joining the military, what advice would you give them?
I all depends on what you were going to do in the military. I have a son that's in the military. He's got I think he's got 22 years. He's in the Air Force. And I asked him, I said, he said, no, I'm going to join the Air Force. And I said, okay, all right, just make it. And he's been over in the Afghanistan and stuff like that. I think he's been over there like 6 or 7 times.
What was your experience like in the places that you like to visit, such as Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, it was just nice. And they were so, back then they loved music and they loved jazz. And I liked music back then. And I couldn't believe that these people in another country so far away can like almost the same kind of music I'm liking. They're liking Otis, well, you guys wouldn't know anything about Otis Redding and all them, but they loved that kind of music. And I was like, I can't get over it. I couldn't get over it. And they had like I said, Hong Kong is so compact. You know, it's an island, you know what I mean? But beautiful place. Beautiful, beautiful place. And the people were beautiful too.
What was your family and friends' reaction to when you enlisted in the military?
Funny that you would say that. I had a friend of mine who was a real good friend on the outside. He used to work with me, with my uncle. And I think maybe about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, he came up to me and he said, we was at a funeral, and he said to me, he said, hey, Bruce, man, how are you? I said, good. And he was saying, man, you know something? The day I heard you were going in the military, and this guy, I'd say he's pretty close to 80 now. I'd say 77, 80. He said to me, Bruce, man, when you was going in the military, he said, man, I cried. And I went, what? You know, I mean, he never said that. I never heard that before. And he said to me, he said, no, man, because I considered you one of my best, you was one of my best friends. And to go away like that, I didn't know if you'd make it or what. So when I remember him saying that, man, I went, wow, Steve, I'm glad you told it to me, you know what I mean? So so like I said, some of my friends, they were saying, you're crazy, man. When are you going to Vietnam? And why would you, go in the military? Not at this time, 1966. Everybody was trying to get away. They were, dodging, what they call them, draft dodgers or whatever,
How close did you ever get to any sort of combat in the war?
Close.
Describe that experience.
Close. Well, close. I'll tell you. I'm just going to give you a little rough. I was in a bus, and I knew we were in a bad area. I'll leave it like that. And I went to the door of the bus because there was a couple others in the bus and the driver of the bus, and I was telling the driver, just keep driving, just keep driving. And I remembered, I'm not sure if I had my rifle or I had a pistol, but I went to the door of the bus, and the driver was, racking, his nerves was racking, and he goosed. And man, I went out the door and the bus ran over me. And I mean, it was a big bus. It ran right up my leg. All right? And I said, hey, I'm screaming. And he backed off. And I didn't, I'm talking about looked like it wasn't as big as a Greyhound bus, but it was, say, like a school bus. And it didn't break a bone, and it ran right up my leg. So everybody was running. Everybody was getting ready to scoot now. You know what I mean? Because we was in a rough area.
How do you think the military has changed from when you were serving to today?
Well, they have more. They have more technology. You know what I mean? I talk to my son, and sometimes I get worried when I hear him going over to Afghanistan or Kyrgyzstan or something like that. He does stuff. He said, Dad, I can't tell you all that, So I know what it is when you can't talk. So I get a little, and I go, son, man, you going over there again? He said, Dad, I'm in the Air Force. I go, what's that mean? Well, I'm not in the Army or the Marines. He says, we have technology. I said, oh, okay. And he would say that they have certain things that, anything shot inside, they could pick it up like that. So the only thing that we had was infrared light that you could see at night. You know what I mean? That was about the most technology we had.
How has your military experience affected your life after the military?
I didn't want anything to do with the military when I got back because I had a kind of rough taste, segregation, uh, even in Vietnam. They had the nerve to say whites only in the bar. We're over here. Are you serious? We, and you're 19, 20, 19 years old. You're not going to listen to that. And you're walking around with a pistol and a rifle? Yeah. So we're sitting there going like, how are we going to defuse this? So we just said, hey, look, that's not happening. And we were going to make sure that we would take care of that. Well, long story short, the military came in and, the company CEO went and closed the bar down because, it was just causing division. And we don't need that. We didn't need that over there. We had enough division from what we were here, what was going on. So it changed my head. And then when I came back out, I remember throwing my duffel bag in the cellar. I didn't want anything to do with the military. And I remembered they were telling me about Agent Orange. You had to be careful with that because I was in areas they didn't tell us that, but I found out later. I was in areas that had it. So you had to watch yourself, be careful, watch yourself. Anytime you get any certain things on, go to the military. Well, they didn't, I was one of the, about 3 or 4 of us were one of the first guys to, deal with signing in for Agent Orange or be checked. And like you said, any time that I got anywhere to deal with the military because maybe some symptoms showing, I always had a fight for anything. And I kind of think now, we started, some friends and myself, we started as a non-veterans association in Hyannis just so we could help other veterans. If we didn't do anything, we could give them a ride to Brockton. We didn't even want to deal with Rhode Island because Rhode Island was a little rough. And I didn't like the guys to go to Rhode Island because a lot of the guys had trauma. They were still under trauma. And, it was tough. But now they've helped me out. The military's helped me out a whole lot.
Did your time in the military affect any of your beliefs or morals?
It affected one thing because even when I wasn't getting paid, the guys around me they said, don't worry about it, man. Whenever you get your stuff, whatever we come up with, we'll come up with. So it made me believe that I did not worry about what color you are. The context of your heart was more important. And everybody, white, black, red, yellow, whatever it was that was in our company, we was 17th Aviation, we was 155 Air Assault. And we had 2 people to deal with. We had the Airborne Division and we had like Korean. And they were tough, man. I'm telling you, they were tough. But it made me say, well, you know what? If we all could get along, they was all getting along. We all got along. And like I said, the one thing that it taught me that, yes, that man upstairs protected me that whole way. As you mature, you'll see. You say, man, I got run over, fell out of this here, running for your life, certain things go on, and you're saying like, and you made it back. And not only that, don't forget, I told you, I signed to go back because I didn't want to be around this area. And when I went back, it took care of me then too. So my morals, yeah, and you when you're young, that's the killer part. No one can tell you anything, you listen, you take it, and then I'm going to fix it and do it a little. I'll take a little from mom and dad, but I'm going to do it my way, you know. And I thank God that I let him do it his way.
Can you tell us about your rank and status in the Army?
I was a Spec 4. I was getting ready to become a Spec 5.
So what does that mean?
Specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, one. That's it.
What do you think about the amount of money this country spends on the military?
That to me is it's astronomical. I can't imagine, you know. And they want to, but you know, what do you do? What do you, like the dilemma with the you know, with the wall. You know what I mean? I look at that and I go, we had chaos in Vietnam because we had no wall. We had demilitarized zone, which was like a wall, but it wasn't a wall. And we couldn't really find out who was the bad guys coming or who's the good guys going. There was no wall. So, like you said, so, you know, when you look at the money spent, I'd rather deal with, I'd rather we all get a better education. We all get better medical insurance. I'd rather see some of that. But where's that dividing line? If I don't really know what kind of money you're spending for the military, then I am assuming. Well, if I'm assuming that your money's way over the top, I'd rather put it on, you know, taking care of us. You know what I mean? Americans, I mean. You know what I mean?
You mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us more about your association that you run for veterans in Hyannis?
It was about 5 of us guys. We got together. We used to. We all right. 5 of us. We got together and everybody. One was a Marine, and the other guy was with me. He was a sniper. And another guy was like a Pathfinder. He was the point man. And we all got together in Hyannis, and for some reason we kept talking, and next thing you know, we were saying, you know, there's a lot of guys here, man, and they don't want anything to do with the military. I said, and man, they're staying out. You know, they're coming away with some type of sicknesses. They may not even know what they get. They think they got a cold or something. I go, we need to just at least just go out there and see if we can find them. And we Vietnam veterans is like anybody else. We know who you are, and we would go and say, look, why don't you just come on over? We're going to have a meeting, and we need your input. I remember at Community Action Committee back there, or CAC, Community Action Committee, they let me have a space for the non-veterans before we got our own building. Before we rented our own building on Main Street. So we had a little space, and we used to have all the guys, whatever we could get you, come and we'd speak, and, you know, just get stuff off your chest. And the only place that we could go was Brockton. There was a military hospital out there in Brockton. And we would take the guys if they needed to go. I had a clunker, but it would get me to Brockton and back. So whoever we could give a ride, or if we needed to give them a ride. We started out giving them rides. We figured, hey, if we can get you one-on-one riding, you might tell us something that might relieve a little problem for me. You know, because I needed it. I needed it because, you know what I mean, I was going through some stuff. I didn't even think I had any, whatever you call, flashbacks or anything until I went to a counselor and went through it, and he said, yeah, Bruce, you do have a little PSDC, you know what I mean? And I said, really? He said, no, you do. He said, but let's go a little further, you know, and that's how we started trying to help the veterans. And I thought we did a real good job in the beginning, and then it got political, and that's kind of separated.
Well, it looks like we're about ready to wrap things up. So thank you so much for taking in this interview with us. And
My pleasure.
thank you.
God bless you.